It's Millennial Trades. It is December 12th, 2022. Flying by. We're going to talk about the markets. We're also going to talk about the currency wars and the energy crisis. There were some comments made by DImond that I also want to talk about. I watched his interview from yesterday when he was on Face the Nation. I think that's NBC. He made some very interesting comments. I recommend everybody watch the interview. It's about a half an hour. It's like 34 minutes. Watch the entire interview. DImond covers so many different topics. This guy, the CEO of JP Morgan, he's made some comments kind of being critical of both the Republicans and the Democrats, but I don't think he is a big, Trump fan or anything like that. If anything, he's kind of a bleeding heart globalist, but he's incredibly smart, and some of his ideas will lead you down so many rabbit holes. So we're going to talk about DImond and some of his comments. Let's first just talk about my trade this morning. I went ahead and traded Amazon because I usually trade PayPal, but I'm trying to branch out and trade some other stocks. So I traded Amazon right at the open, caught that move to the downside. The market was kind of chopping around within the first 10 minutes or so. Market was actually very choppy, and then enjoyed a little bit of a repose. What did trading economics, how did they put it? Wall Street enjoys some respite. So I think the markets are actually up a little bit. But the morning drop on Amazon yielded me about over $400. So I took it and ran. I was watching the markets the rest of the day, but I did not put on any other trades. I'm trying to figure out when and how I'm going to position myself if I am overnight for these interest rate hikes. And we have inflation data coming out tomorrow, but they're actually expecting that to come in a little bit lower, yet set to fall to 7.3%, the lowest since December. So, we'll see how that works out. But the point is that, I'm trying to build up a cash position because what I really believe in is the dollar right now. I think the dollar is prime. The little pullback that we saw from its most recent run up, I think it's a great opportunity to start getting into dollars. So I'm thinking about maybe even rebalancing a little bit in my family's stock portfolios. If they'll take my advice. I let them control everything, obviously, but I try to give them a little bit of advice here. So I think getting into dollars, the dollars will buy more going into the future. That's my hunch. That's sort of my philosophy right now, just based on really the interest rates and hopefully the inflation coming down. We see inflation coming down in things, everything from crypto to stocks. We saw lumber really come down as well the past year or so. So yeah, there's a lot of things to go over here, but I'm happy with the trade. I'm blessed by God, obviously right now, extremely blessed, and just trying to orient myself, throughout the day by reading a lot and reading Holy Scriptures, but also history and current events and financial news. So really just trying to expand all areas. I'm reading a philosophy book, an Aristotle book. I'm trying to really expand and not to sound like that scam artist on YouTube. I don't even remember his name. But knowledge. Remember the guy that was filming, Tyler Lopez, I think is his name. I don't want to sound too much like that, but knowledge is important. It's extremely important, and you start making connections, between the biblical text, the ancient text, and some of the modern stuff that we are faced with today. So, with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get into this. Iran's falling currency. I want to start with this one because this really illustrates the war, right? There is a currency war going on. Oh, there's always a currency war. And a lot of the times it's really big traders. I don't want to mention any names, but I think you guys know, it might be somebody who backs the Democrat Party or several people. But no, I'm kidding. They back both parties. The point is that there are really big traders as well that profit off of these currency wars. All right. So Iran's currency falls further against the dollar amid unrest. Iran is actually executing protesters right now. My sort of thing here is like, the West is all about inclusion, right? But at the same time, diversity, inclusion, globally. But at the same time, they're really against Iran. They're against the Islamic, Republic or the Islamic states. Saudi Arabia is allowed to have a monarchy. There's no issue there. But with Iran, I think it's a little hypocritical the way the way the media, I think, is portraying. We don't exactly know what's going on the ground there. I think a lot of this stuff is less about, possibly, right? From what I've read, some of these protests could be more about inflation, their currency, the unemployment, all that kind of stuff, financial, economic turmoil than it is. I think the mainstream media is really highlighting the sort of the women's lib aspect to these protests, but I think there's a lot more going on in Iran. And I think there's also, you got to consider the influence that America has just sort of destroying their currency, purposefully trying to destroy Iran's currency. So there's that too, right? But this really illustrates, if you look into this, I'm just looking at the Associated Press here. You really get a sense of there is currency wars going on. There's also currency wars between, China and the U.S. Not only trade wars, but currency wars. The yen versus the dollar. Basically, China is, the entire world after the Russians invaded Ukraine, and then America kind of used the dollar-dominated financial and monetary system to kind of seize assets and cut Russia off from a lot of these, being able to transact. Because all that happened, countries like China and Saudi Arabia are now even more interested in trying to figure out how to maybe avoid some of that and reduce their exposure to the dollar. Not that they're going to stop using the dollar and everybody's going to abandon it, but I think other countries are trying to, it makes sense to reduce their exposure to the dollar because now it's Russia. Next, it could be them. It could be Saudi Arabia, which I don't see that happening, but maybe even China. But China's recently met with Saudi Arabia, met with the prince or somebody over there, and they're trying to figure out ways to transact to buy oil from Saudi Arabia in yuan. Now, Saudi Arabia is not down for this, okay? So they haven't actually come to any real negotiation or trade deal on this, but China is very interested in transacting in yuan to buy oil from Saudi Arabia. So you have that, right? And if we see more and more of the world kind of get spooked by these sanctions on Russia, seizing all of these assets and just cutting Russia off from banking, I think it does spook the rest of the globe, and these other governments potentially will reduce their exposure to the dollar and de-dollarize. But in the meantime, right, the dollar is still very strong. It's the world's strongest currency. It's really the only reserve currency. But China wants that spot. China wants to be a world reserve currency. Is that going to happen? Time will only tell. They have enormous problems right now. America's in a position of strength, which is one of the things Jamie Dimon says. And I believe him when he says that. I do believe America is in a position of strength. I believe the Fed and the US government is in a position of strength, even with all the nonsense. I won't get into the political banter right now. This is the greatest country in the world and obviously blessed, by God, for sure. Without a doubt, 100%. So let's talk about the dollar, right? And then we're gonna kind of tie the dollar in with oil a little bit, because the dollar is actually a commodity currency. This is another aspect of the dollar that I'm kind of researching. The dollar is a commodity currency. It's backed by oil, in a way, in a sense. It's tied to oil, and not just oil, but just everything that we produce, all of our exports, which is essentially the middle class. But the dollar has recently kind of slumped. You'll see these news headlines, right? You'll see headlines about the dollar pulling back and the dollar having its worst month in 12 years, all this kind of stuff, which is true. November and December have not been good months for the dollar. But that being said, the dollar had a huge run up. It's up like 9% on the year. That's huge for the dollar, and it's better than any of the markets. All of the markets are essentially down. Maybe housing is just finally kind of slowing down right now. But the dollar index from a technical standpoint, what I'm looking at from a technical standpoint, this is my opinion, the dollar looks prime for another run up, right? So I'm keeping dollars, I'm stacking dollars, I'm getting into dollars, and I'm trying to make more dollars by trading, right? And just keep those dollars and just, and maybe in a few years or, maybe in a few months, I'll put some of that money more to work. But right now I just want to stack up dollars going into the new year. That's sort of my New Year's resolution, is to really focus on my stack. And I'll have several of them. I have several bank accounts that I'm stacking cash in. So maybe even getting a money market account eventually. But the dollar being attached to oil, higher prices, higher oil prices is going to be good for the dollar. Now, if we want to see the stocks go up, we need commodities to come down, obviously. But oil, could have another run back up. It's possible. And if that happens, if oil price, it went from like, what was it, 71 or 72 all the way back up to 80, I think last week. I'm not exactly sure where it's at this very moment, but I wasn't following oil too much today. My point is that if we see higher oil prices, and there are problems with the oil supply, I'll get into that in a moment. If we see that, it'll be good for the dollar, right? Because the dollar is attached to oil and benefits. So, well, let me mention this. When it comes to oil, because this gets into the energy crisis and some of the comments that Jamie Dimon made on Face the Nation. I really want to focus on the energy comments that he made. But with oil, you have OPEC missing quotas. You have OPEC missing quotas, and you have, like I said, because of the war or whatever, supply chain issues, supply lines breaking down, the sort of the global trade networks retreating into more regional trade networks. There's a lot of reasons this could be happening. Higher demand for energy, but the oil is, it's getting hard for some of these smaller countries and Europe to pay for, to be able to get. It's not a good situation. So I'm going to link this Jamie Dimon interview down below. I really want you guys to go and watch it. It's only 34 minutes, okay? Just sit through 34 minutes and you will gain so much vast insight into how this guy's mind works. Right? This is one of the biggest banks in America, if not the biggest, JP Morgan, been around for over 100 years. Watch this interview because it's not necessarily political, but he talks about the geopolitics. He talks about domestic politics. He talks about financing, and he does promote the bank in a way that kind of makes them look like good guys, right? It makes the bank look like we're here to help the community. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's not so true. But he addresses so many different things. He addresses how it has to be a business, has to be sustainable. If it's going to lift other people up. He's not so much for charity, and he doesn't like Trump. So that's another. I don't think he's particularly fond of Trump, which I just found interesting because he's very vocal. Jamie Dimon is a very vocal, politically, he's very vocal for a financial CEO, a banking CEO. He talked about how CO2. How gas and oil right now is the best way to reduce CO2 emissions, because if you have to go back to coal, all right, you can make all the electric cars you want, but if you're burning coal to generate electricity, you're not really accomplishing anything with the electric vehicles. So he said oil and gas is the best way to reduce coal, and if you reduce coal, you're reducing CO2 emissions. So that's very fundamental. It's important. But he talks about there's other things you can do. There's wind, solar, but like the UK, the UK, because of lack of wind and the war and the supply issues getting natural gas and oil, the UK has actually turned on 2 coal plants as a sort of a contingency. There's that word again. Why can't I say that word? Contingency plan. There we go. I can get it out. Contingency plan to avoid maybe some of the danger of running out of energy this winter. Depending on how cold it's going to be in Europe. So, and then, like I said, you had OPEC missing production quotas. The whole situation with oil and gas, it's very serious. I think the United States will kind of weather the storm right now. Europe may even get through this winter, but if this war continues to drag on and the Ukraine, just because of their ideology, drags the rest of the world into this war, I just wish they could find a solution that the United States would be happy with and that Russia could live with as well. That's really what we need. And God bless all 3 nations. Let's hope they can come to some agreement here, because that's really what we're talking about. The United States, Russia, and the Ukraine. Europe's going to do whatever the United States tells them to do. Let's just pray that they can come to a solution. I really hope everybody's asking for that in their prayers, because that's what we need. We do not want to get dragged into this. But if it goes on longer, Europe might get through this winter, but will they get through the winter of 2023? These are definitely questions that should be asked. And Jamie Dimon brings some of this stuff up. All right. So I'm paraphrasing some of the stuff that he talked about. He was sort of asked about, what is the bank doing to, help communities? Because that's a big thing. I think it's called ESG. Remember, we talked about this with Larry Fink and BlackRock, and a lot of investors, including the state of Florida and Ron DeSantis, are upset that BlackRock is focusing so much on ESG, which is basically, globalist propaganda, and they're focusing on that over profits. People are upset about that. And I think Jamie Dimon has a little bit of that, but also the mainstream media, they sort of question him because he's a big banker. So he has to come up with these sort of ESG type responses, so that he can sound sort of legit in the mainstream media's eyes. But he talks about how, they're trying to reach the unbanked in America, and that they want to help out with mortgages. They want to help people borrow money, right? Which I don't know if that's a great thing, but I guess in this world, we need the banking institutions, right? We've had them since ancient Babylon. It's just part of the city, right? It's part of the state. I think the Greek word is polis. I actually read this. I think it's polis, which basically means city in Greek. I read this in the philosophy book that I'm reading. It's like an intro book to Aristotle. It's basically like the subtitle is Aristotle for everybody. But polis means city. And so you get all these words like policy, political, metropolitan area. All of these kind of words come from this Greek root. And so this concept, this concept of living in a city, living in a society, well, having banks, having an institution that can sort of issue out debt and collect interest, collect debt, that you can store money in, store economic and financial energy in. We need these institutions. And JP Morgan, I do think, because they weathered the storm so well in 2008. I think we could have a little bit more faith in them. I used to have a JP Morgan Chase account when I was living in California, but now I use credit unions and more smaller banks. I have an online bank account as well. I don't keep a lot of money in it, but I just don't trust the big banks. Even though I kind of admire Jamie Dimon for what he's done, reading into his story. Like, he's one of the most famous billionaires who became a billionaire by being an employee. Essentially, he didn't start his own company or anything like that. He's not a technologist per se, but he has a lot of ideas about technology and everything, environment and social issues. But he claims he wants to lift up society. I really want you guys to watch this video, because I have my own opinions about it and stuff, but I think everybody else should follow some of the things that the banking elite say, right? They could be lying to us, but I think sometimes they're telling the truth, you know? And I don't think it's too simplistic to just say, oh, all of the bankers are bad or all of the bankers are, evil. I mean, they are kind of crooks. Don't get me wrong. JP Morgan has been fined billions of dollars, I believe, for all kinds of schemes. I know that I think it was JP Morgan that was found guilty of spoofing the metals market. So there is some, perhaps criminal activity coming from these big institutions, but nevertheless, we still need them, right? We still need them, and they're chosen by God to be there, or they wouldn't be there. That's my opinion. So yeah, Jamie Dimon also said that he's a patriot and that national security is important, and he says all of this, but then he's also very pro-immigration. I'm not sure if he really cares about securing the border. He claims the more immigration we have, the more innovation we'll have. I'm going to open this energy drink right here. How long is this video? I have been talking for a minute. Time just flies by. 21 minutes. Okay. It might be another half an hour long podcast, but you guys seem to be enjoying it. I appreciate that you guys are watching the longer formed content as well. If you want to see my trades or just, other mindless videos, go to my shorts feed. And I post shorts every single day. Also, follow me on Instagram at Millennial Trades. All right, we're going to move on here because I predicted, as far as precious metals are concerned, I predicted that precious metals were probably going to pull back in a substantial way because they were kind of at these supply zones. Well, I must correct myself. I mean, gold is near 1,800 again, and silver is now up closer to $23, $24. So they broke their most recent highs. It's even higher now. Just go and look at the charts for silver and gold. So I was wrong about that, but I am optimistic that we will get a significant pullback in metals, all right? And that is when I'll be prepared to kind of, stack maybe another 25, 30 ounces of silver, maybe try to get an ounce of gold. So I'm waiting for that pullback. I'm anticipating it, and I really hope that it happens. It may not. And for the people that are holding metals and stacking metals and up on metals, I hope it doesn't pull back. But for me personally, that's what I'm waiting for. I'm kind of watching that right now. There was one more story I wanted to hit, and this was about a bunch of celebrities, including Madonna, The Weeknd, Ryan Reynolds, a bunch of them, most of them completely botched and just degenerate people. They are getting sued because they were promoting these NFTs, some sort of NFT scam, the non-fungible tokens in the crypto space that all these YouTubers were talking about. I think it was, what's his name? Logan Paul lost, I think, like a few $100,000 on some NFT that he bought way up at the highs like a year ago. Anyways, all these celebrities are getting sued for promoting, these NFTs. And it just makes me think of the whole FTX fallout. People keep asking me about that, like in real life, people that know I follow this kind of thing. I really, I made my videos and I talked about it. The last thing I'll say what I'll say about the FTX thing is that there were a lot of YouTubers that were paid a lot of money, probably millions of dollars, by Sam Bankman-Fried to push FTX on their viewers, and then their viewers lost money. So there should be a way. Those YouTubers, they should be transparent, right? Everybody knows who they are. I don't even need to mention their names. They should be transparent and show how much money they made off of the sponsorships, and then to keep that money is just, I don't think it shouldn't be done, right? They should give that money back to their viewers in some way or donate the money somehow. Just do some good with the money because they made a lot of money. Some of them made millions of dollars pushing this scam. And it's just, it's really it's a sad thing here. But I just don't really follow the crypto space that much because, like Jamie Dimon said, it's like holding pet rocks. I think that's a great way to describe the crypto space, especially now. we could still be deep in the Bitcoin bubble. We really don't know. The last point is more of a question, but is the low in for the year on the stock market? That's really what I'm wondering. Is the low in for the year? Because if it's in for the year, I'm not looking to really put on a big position going short overnight or trying to trade the inflation or the interest rates, right? If the low is in for the year, you may as well just kind of sit out or maybe scalp. I think even next week, I'm not even going to trade. Like the week of Christmas, I think I'm just going to chill and, make it through the new year, right? Maybe trade the week after Christmas, but that might even be slower. I don't know. I have to kind of look into this and see how slow these weeks are. I know this week might be the most anticipated week of the year. We might have some crazy volatility this week, but again, we're getting towards the end of the year. Maybe I'm getting scared. Maybe I'm just getting a little bit too conservative here, but that's what I've been thinking. But I'm really wondering, and let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think the low is in for the stock market for the year? So with that, go and follow me on Instagram at Millennial Trades, and check out my Rumble and BitChute as well. Follow me on some of the alternative media platforms. And with that, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. As always, until next time, I'll see you on the next video.